Hi everyone, it's a serious but necessary report here. This is from the Detroit Free Press, who've done a very comprehensive article on shunning, and they are addressing the suicides caused by shunning and the prospect of shunning. So just to warn you, this is too heavy for you at the moment. Some very brave people have spoken out. So it starts off, Amber Sawyer. There you can see her. It says she holds 2 framed photos with herself when she was 8, left, her sister Angela 4, center, and her oldest Donna 21 right, on March the 16th, 2018 in Pascagoula. Is that how you say it? The photo was taken several months before her sister Donna committed suicide in 1988. Amber Sawyer was just 8 years old, it says. When it happened, she was watching cartoons on the living room floor of her Mississippi home when she heard the bang. She went to investigate and found her 21-year-old sister Donna dead on her bedroom floor. 8 years old to find that. She had shot herself in the heart with her father's hunting rifle weeks after getting excommunicated by the church for getting engaged to a non-Jehovah's Witness. For Sawyer, who sat crouched next to her sister's body for hours that day, waiting for her mother to come home from her door-to-door missionary work, it was the beginning of a long, painful journey that would one day tear her family apart. And that's classic as well, isn't it? There's a mother going out, knocking on doors, trying to, it would have been sell magazines in those days, I think, when she was sorely needed at home for her daughters. Years later, Sawyer got excommunicated too after seeking a divorce from an abusive husband. Some of you know that one. She ended up leaving the husband and the faith. Her family cut all ties. Jehovah's Witness kids grow up knowing that if they ever mess up, their parents will leave them, and that's scary, Sawyer, now 38, said in a recent interview from her home in Pascagoula. The shunning is supposed to make us miss them so much that we come back. It didn't work. Sawyer and many others like her are now denouncing the church's shunning practices in the wake of a recent recent murder-suicide in Keego Harbor that killed a family of 4 ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who were ostracized after leaving the faith. The death sparked outrage among scores of ex-JWs nationwide who took to Facebook, online forums, blogs, and YouTube, arguing the tragedy highlights a pervasive yet rarely publicized problem within the church. Shunning is pushing the most vulnerable people over the edge, they say, and tearing families apart. There's a link there. In the Michigan case, a distraught mother shot and killed her husband, her 2 grown children, and herself in their Keego Harbor home, shocking the small and quiet Oakland County community. So it goes into the Stewart story, which most of you I would think would be familiar with now. It quotes the Watchtower saying in 2005, saying about how bad universities and colleges are for promoting immorality, and that the Stewarts were ostracized for sending their children to college. It says here, one friend who requested anonymity said she believes the killing was the result of depression, not religion. She needed medical help. Well, she did as well. No denying that. And then Joyce Taylor, who's the one who's brought the story out, says that about 6 weeks before the killings, Lauren started getting religiously preoccupied and telling her, "It's the end times." I know it is. That's very telling. It's a picture of the 2 of them together, friends in better days. Joyce has got a lovely frock on there. That's at a Renaissance festival. 2013 it is there. Taylor is saying that weeks later, Lauren had a vacant look in her eyes. She was emotionally distressed. It was just a week later. She said in the suicide note, this is Joyce talking, that she felt by killing them it was the only way to save them. Now, ex-JWs will get how her thinking went there. She said she's sorry that she has to do this, but it was the only way to save them all. It says about Joyce leaving in 86, about the belief of being resurrected, and that believing that she thinks that Laura never deprogrammed physically out, but mentally in, POMI as it's called, been excommunicated, and she was desperate, and that shunning can lead to great trauma among people, because the Jehovah's Witnesses are a very tight community, said Matthew Schmaltz, a religious studies associate professor at the College of Holy Cross in Worcester, Mass. This guy's a bit of an arsehole, I'm going to warn you, professor or not. I mean, it's a huge trauma, been proven to be a huge trauma for anyone, but we can exaggerate that amongst the Jehovah's Witnesses because of circumstances. He says here, if you're separated out, you're really left to your own devices in ways that are very challenging and painful. Once you leave a group that's been your whole life, letting that go is a kind of death, or some believe it is a literal death as well. So I was saying about the tragedy, has spoken to people, to speak out. Sorry, I'm very tired. About people who had lost someone to suicide or attempted suicide themselves. How their families, friends and church community had written them off for making mistakes, for being human. Well, they'll even do that, of course, not even for making mistakes. And all mistakes can be forgiven in reality. Watchtower says they can't. But not for asking questions, as we know. Church calls it being disfellowship. Members can return if they repent, change their behaviour and prove themselves worthy of being reinstated, which didn't happen with the prodigal son. But unless or until that happens, members are encouraged to avoid the sinners. They're not encouraged. They'll be disfellowship themselves if they don't shun them. So that's a lie. Mothers go years, even decades, well, even for the rest of their lives, without talking to their children. Siblings write off siblings, friends shuns friends. An estimated 70,000 Jehovah's Witnesses are disfellowshipped every year, roughly 1% of the church's total population, according to data published by the Watchtower, which won't be accurate. The names are published at local kingdom halls. Of those, 2/3 never return. So it doesn't work, does it, as getting people back? About 8.4 million people worldwide, well, that's according to Watchtower. The current members argue that those who've been disfellowshipped are disgruntled and angry, who have an axe to grind because they were disfellowshipped. Oh, get real. Or they are lost souls who have misinterpreted the meaning and love behind the faith. Oh, get real. Members say they believe the shunning accusations are exaggerated. Heavens to Betsy. Heavens to Betsy, and that the suicides are often more about mental illness and ostracism. Oh, this is... the departed disagree. In the world of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, they maintain the shunned are considered dead. Well, to their families, that's not ex-JW maintaining it. That's fact. Just like the suicide victims, these are the stories. So we're back to Sawyer's story, who was there when her sister committed suicide. It was a difficult conversation to wrap her 8-year-old brain around. You know your sister was being bad, right? said her mother to her after the suicide. Oh, that really helped. What she did was stupid, right? To take your own life is very wrong, the mother continued. I didn't understand what was going on, and I said, oh, okay, recalled Sawyer. In my 8-year-old brain, I was thinking, when I mess up, my mum's going to hate me. And so began her painful journey into the Jehovah's Witness faith, the religion she was born into and grew up, where her fears of abandonment took hold at the age of 8. Sawyer believes the shunning drove her sister to suicide after the church disfellowshipped her for getting engaged to a non-JW. The fiancé left her sister, who was thrown into depression. Her sister tried turning to her mother for consolation, but her mother would read scripture and tell her, until you start acting right, you're going to have these bad things happen to you. Bad things happened to Sawyer too. At 30, she sought a divorce from her husband because he was abusive and cheating on her, she said. But the church elders and family pressured her to save her marriage. I showed them the holes in my walls, Sawyer said, referring to the damage her ex-husband did to the home during fights. They told me to pray more. and sent me back home to him. Yep, I did that. Sawyer took up smoking to handle the stress, which got her disfellowship, because smoking's not allowed. So, being adulterous and being so physically violent, that's okay, especially when you've got kids around, that's okay. She also went through with a divorce. She ended up losing her home to foreclosure and turned to her mother for help, as she had 2 children to raise. And there she is there next to her sister's grave. Her mother took her in temporarily, but when the church elders found out, they threatened to disvelop Sawyer's mother. Hello? That's what they do. So it's not about choice. These things aren't about choice. Unless you choose, they say you're choosing then to leave Jehovah if you help your family, who let the grandkids stay but not the daughter. Sawyer ended up homeless for 6 months, living out of her car in a community college parking lot. She landed on her feet with the help of a student loan. She got an apartment, a job as a hospice nurse, and her children, now 10 and 18, back. She found herself but lost her family along the way. Her mother doesn't speak to her, she said. She can't recall the last time they spoke. Her sister in Alabama hasn't spoken to her since Sawyer got divorced in 2010. Way to go. She was on my porch with my parents. My sister looked at me and said, "You're abandoning me just like Donna did," and left. That's the last thing she ever said. Sawyer has kept silent about her pain for decades. This is a dangerous cult, she said, of a former religion. It's important for people to realize this is serious. He lost his daughter. This is a terrible story. It was February 3rd, 2011, when Dave Bracy was disfellowshipped at the age of 61 by his Utah church. By then, he had been an elder 3 times, a job that troubled him as he often found himself judging and sanctioning people who had sinned in the eyes of the church: smokers, drug users, adulterers, homosexuals. "I had a terrible time with that," Gracie said. Now note this. "All we were doing was chasing people around and catching them in their sins and kicking them out. And that's what a lot of you have reported here." But then came the day when the church judged his own children. That's when Gracie said he started rebelling. Picture of him with his daughter. It says 4 years later, Laura, 37, who had been excommunicated by the church twice and reinstated twice, took her life following a fallout with the church elders. In 2010, Grace's 38-year-old daughter, Laura, committed suicide, dearie me, after a fallout with the church elders. Does happen straight away. They just go off. And that's it. It put me in an absolute rage, he recalls. According to Gracie, his daughter was the rebellious type growing up and suffered from mental illness. She got into drugs and became homeless at one point, but tried to get her life in order. At 33, she got baptized, and over the next 4 years, she was disfellowshipped twice and reinstated twice. But in January 2010, following a meeting with church elders, Laura fatally overdosed on prescription medication. She had been living in an apartment complex with other JWs in California and had a medical marijuana card for anxiety and stress. Gracie suspects she told the elders about the card. Well, medical marijuana under prescription is not approved by Watchtower. It's okay to take all the chemical stuff. I mean, yeah, marijuana's got all its problems as well, and lots of chemicals as well. But when it's prescribed like that, come on, guys. Come on. It's okay to take one, but not the other. Then I know someone who on medical prescription marijuana's got off their other drugs, which were doing in the liver. Grace, the elders won't tell me why they met with her, Gracie said. Obviously, she was distressed that night and they left her alone. They knew how fragile my daughter was. It's my guess that they excommunicated her that night, but they won't tell me. They failed to protect her in her most vulnerable state, bastards. Now, what's the system in the States and in California? Because in the UK, you would have a coroner's court would inquire in a death like this, would inquire into it and what happened, and the circumstances leading up. The elders would have to come out and say what happened. So I think that's pretty damn cruel. They won't tell him. That is very cruel. The same year, Gracie would suffer more heartache at the hands of his church. His 40, oh, here we go. His 14-year-old stepdaughter had been raped, he said, but the elders didn't believe her. It's because she wouldn't have two witnesses, wouldn't it? An investigation followed, and an administrative judge and Child Protective Services made a finding that the JWs were guilty of child maltreatment. The church mounted a campaign to oust the Gracies, who appealed to the JW's New York headquarters, claiming the church had harmed their daughter. This is not an isolated story. This doesn't read as fantasy made up land, because it happens again and again and again. On February the 11th, 2011, the Gracies were excommunicated. We were so indoctrinated, we had difficulty with it, Bracy admits, noting he and his wife officially left the faith in March 2013 after getting repeatedly shunned. So they hadn't left, like, in themselves. They were told, you've left. But they hadn't. I walked out and never came back. Dearie me. So they'd spent 2 years, obviously, trying to interact and get nowhere. I started kind of waking up. There's one of his daughters. There's the one who suicided. Bracy, who considers himself agnostic now, and that's a common reaction, is focusing on helping all of his family escape the JW organization. I want to expose this religion for what they really are. It's a cult that splits up family and separates people from life. They seem nice on a Saturday morning when they are peddling the Watchtower, but they are insidious. And another personal account, 37, Spencer Tyler of East Point has found her voice. For years, the excommunicated JW has been afraid to speak about her fallout with the church out of fear of upsetting her family. She knows of 4 ex-JWs who attempted suicide, including herself. 2 friends were successful. One girl hanged herself. The man shot himself in the head. This is a subject that needs awareness brought to it, Spencer said. It's been a long journey for a lot of us. It's a secretive cult. I knew that speaking out and being an activist would put me in the crosshairs. My mother already treats me like I am dead, and to know that I'm actively speaking against the organization would kill her. Tyler is not the woman's real name, but her pen name. She requested anonymity to avoid repercussions from relatives, though she's yearning to let the world know her story. Too many people have suffered, she says. She can't be quiet anymore. Tyler was born and raised in Detroit and now lives in East Point. She grew up in the Jehovah's Witness community and married an eldest son. They have 2 children, ages 11 and 8. There's a picture of Joyce Taylor there. Tyler, who suffered from depression most of her life, was excommunicated 7 years ago, accused of adultery, being an apostate and disagreeing with the church's teachings. Her husband stuck by her, yay, and considers himself a fader, which means he's fading out the faith. Her husband has been her rock during what has been a tumultuous last 7 years. Since getting disfellowship, she was hospitalized several times for depression and went through suicidal periods. Her mother never came to see her, she said, nor did anyone from the church. I've been surviving, trying to figure out what my life is now without the cult. Will I ever see my mother again, Tyler said. I can't remember the last time I saw her. Maybe 3 years ago? It's been a while. Tyler and her family have found a new Christian church on Detroit's east side. Well, her husband will be in trouble for that. Grace Community Church, because he won't be allowed, where they've been embraced by a whole new family. She said she and her husband recently told the congregation of their shunning experience, and she could hear the gasps in the pews. The organization takes away so much from you, your family, your prospects, she said. It's a deep, deep, dark abyss that they put you in. Tyler said she was moved to go public with a story following the recent murder-suicide in Keego Harbor. When she learned the shooter was a shunned JW, she cringed, as did many others who believed the ostracism played a role in the killing. With no one to turn to, they said, her world went dark. I just feel like she was so desperate, Tyler said. So many of us have been there. And another personal story. For Californian Kerry Kay, the Keego Harbor killings triggered a host of emotions: anger, pain, frustration. She too is part of the ex-JW community and lost a very good friend to suicide more than 20 years ago. I've just been sick over this. It brings back a lot of memories, Kay said, of the Michigan killings in a recent telephone interview. Kay was in her early 20s when her friend committed suicide after being disfellowshipped for getting pregnant out of wedlock. The woman was 20 years old and 7 months pregnant at the time. Kay said her friend tried to get back into the church, but the elders told her, no, you need more time. You're not qualified to come back. Damn them. That day the friend went home and shot herself in the heart. Now you see, J-Dubs now would say, oh, well, it was her fault because she blah, blah, blah. She wanted to come back. She tried to come back. The elders, the men said, many elders have skeletons in their closet. You're not qualified to come back. Men decided. Not God, not Jesus, the one who looks into hearts. And it certainly didn't follow the pattern of the prodigal son. Bastards. If you're in the organisation, you understand the depression and despair, said Kay, who explained that when someone gets disfellowshipped, word spreads fast in the church. She admitted that she once shunned her own father at the direction of the church. The moment they make an announcement, you're not allowed to have contact with them whatsoever. You have to pretend they're dead, Kay said. That's how they control the people. It's a fear tactic. It's to keep them in the cult, under their control. Kay was 24 when she left the church. Her father had left the faith a few years earlier, after the church pressured him to leave his government job, telling him he had to choose the faith or his work. He picked the job and disassociated himself. Kay said she was forced to shun her father or face consequences. I didn't talk to my father for almost 2 years, and then I finally had enough, Kay said. I started to try to make an escape. See, it worked in reverse, didn't it, for them? It wasn't easy. After she left, she said, she became suicidal. Doctors intervened and saved her life, she said. So can I please say to people the importance of medical help when you leave and are feeling like this? So for this woman, doctors did help. Eventually, she moved away from her hometown to raise her 3 children on her own outside the organisation. They were all college educated now and thriving, she said, and she has found peace as she has dedicated herself to helping others who feel trapped in the religion. I'm wonderful since I left, Kay said. My mission is to help other people. When entire families are destroyed, it makes all of us who have been involved in this cult very angry. We want people to know what is really going on. Okay, get your hypocrisy filters ready. Here we go. Under the heading, We Love Everyone. According to the JW website, 8.4, JDubs worldwide, 1.2 million in the US. We come from hundreds of ethnic and language backgrounds, yet we are united by common goals, which is the death of billions of people. Above all, we want to honor Jehovah, the God of the Bible and the creator of all things. The group states on its website, we do our best to imitate Jesus Christ and are proud to be called Christians. Each of us regularly spends time helping people learn about the Bible and God's kingdom. And if we don't, we get into trouble. Sorry, they didn't write that bit. Because we witness or talk about Jehovah God and his kingdom, we are known as Jehovah's Witnesses. Hey, what do you think of them shirts, guys? The Jehovah's Witness National Organization did not return calls and emails, there you go, from the Free Press for comment on the subject of disfellowshipping. Multiple members and elders were contacted, but all declined to speak on the record, many saying they were not authorized to publicly comment on scripture and church teachings. What about publicly commenting at carts and round the doors, sorry? Following the Keego Harbor killings, however, numerous current Jehovah's Witnesses contact the Free Press to defend their religion, stressing it's about unconditional love, peace, helping people, and having an unwavering commitment to God and Jesus Christ. So I need a robot voice for that. Now, of course, when these J-Dubs are contacting the Free Press, they do believe it. They are conditioned to believe it. It's not until something happens, they wake up partially or wholly or leave, that they see, oh, hang on, this isn't right, this isn't how it was, but this is what people believe inside. And that is what happens in occult training, not occult training, as some may say it is. But like many religions, they said there are rules to follow. Well, fine, like no stealing, killing, committing adultery, smoking, or getting intoxicated on alcohol or drugs. Some sins are considered okay. Let's get straight on this. Bob Smith's got this, paperwork on the elders find that, someone has killed, in the congregation has killed someone. And Watchtower aren't too concerned. If one commits any of these acts, they can be disfellowshipped, but they can get back in if they truly repent and change the behaviour. Well, then again, it's if your face fits. A lot of politics going on. From my perspective, we don't see shunning like they're an evil person or out of God's grace. We just see it as you were put in the corner. It's a time out. No. Put in the corner. You don't spend in the corner for decades. This person is going through their journey and they don't want to come back. They don't, said Danny, a 28-year-old lifelong Jehovah's Witness from New Jersey, who requested that only his first name be used. But 28, man, how much do you know? Some know a lot, others know very little at that age. Danny stressed that disfellowshipping is meant to be temporary, with the goal of having the person return to the faith. The church urges members not to... Urges members? It dictates to members not to socialise with a disfellowshipped outside church. Dictates. That's not an option. It's not an urge. An urging. He said, noting there are two reasons for doing so. One, this teaches a person to look within, take responsibility for what they did and fix their problem. What if they did nothing? People are disfellowshipped all the time for doing nothing. Second, the sinner's act. Sinner can have an effect on the group as a whole, so they need to keep their distance so not to hurt the group until they fully repent. Apart from, what about all the, I know you know what I'm going to say, the child abusers that stay in. They just stay in. I mean, if anyone's going to have an effect, it's them. We're not perfect. It's quote, we'll probably have bad things that weren't handled properly. And then people are resentful, Danny said. Well, they've got a right to be. If the whole family's taken away because things weren't handled properly. But he stressed we try to emphasise that we love everyone. Well, perhaps Danny feels that in his heart, but that's not the truth of the org. Another Jehovah's Witness, I mean, they have to give both sides of the story. They have to do that as the press. Another Jehovah's Witness who contacted the newspaper said disfellowshipping is mandated by the Bible, but it's not just something we do arbitrarily. Well, there's whole arguments which people can find against shunning, or this, and particularly this level of shunning. Believe me, my husband is an elder. It is not something that is done hastily. Now, I wonder if the woman has seen the Shepherd book with the criteria for disfellowshipping. She's not supposed to, but rather a process that takes time and a lot of thought and evidence gathering. Well, that varies between people's conscientiousness from congregation to congregation. Unfortunately, she said, those who leave the faith often do so on bad terms and end up feeling hurt and resentful. Well, many of them do have the right to feeling hurt and resentful, quite honestly. It'd be weird if they didn't. Now, this was where it gets wrong. They are disgruntled and carrying a grudge and want to try to discredit as if they can. Yeah, facts, lady. Facts aren't about discrediting. Facts are about presenting facts. Again, nothing that we're not expecting, yes, because you're told you're going to be persecuted because you're Jehovah's true people. She says, stressing the shunning isn't meant to harm. Well, because people don't talk to shunned people, they don't find out the harm it causes. They don't actually know the harm. And when someone comes back in, if they start talking about, if they're allowed back in, if they start talking about how shunning is harmful, they will get thrown out again. So they're not going to find out the truth of shunning. It is actually, though seemingly a contradiction, something done out of love and concern, the woman said, of disfellowshipping. Many thousands have returned to the fold as a result and have been able to carry on in the faith, but of course many others die. Many others die because of it. Oh, here's this arsehole. Schmaltz, the religious studies professor, said, the JW faith is often misunderstood by mainstream Christians. Their beliefs may seem unorthodox to other religious groups and their rules too strict or extreme, he said. But Jehovah's Witnesses have rational reasons for much of what they believe and do, he said. Rational, yeah, in their mode of thought. Jehovah's Witnesses, he said, believe in a great cataclysm, that the end is near. Again, is continually imminent, that the end is near, is continually imminent. And I hope he said after that, but they didn't. They didn't report for since the 1800s. When you are brought up with that kind of belief within a strong and tightly knit religious setting, he said, it is hard to shake, yeah? The belief in Armageddon, which is central to the Jehovah's Witness worldview, is something that still retains its power, even for people who have left, Schmaltz said, who teaches a course in modern religious movements with discussions about Jehovah's Witnesses and Scientology. Smolt said that Jehovah's Witnesses aren't alone in the practice of shunning. No, they're not. The Amish and other Mennonite groups ostracize those who leave the faith too. And I would not say that that was right. People who are from that group can say more on the subject than I can, which is why many of us speak on what we do know about, because that's more informed. But yeah, it'd be good to hear from the other groups. He said JWs have two goals in mind when they disfellowship someone. One, they need a mechanism to discipline people who don't abide by the tenets. Second, they are trying to create a pure community whose members adhere to the group's beliefs and tenets consistently, but they're not. I have to say, if you looked into it, then you'd find that the disfellowshipping and shunning is not consistent in itself. So that would have to be consistent for number two and number one, but particularly number two is put here to work. The practice, he concedes, can be harmful. Hello, yeah. But there is a rationale for it, he said. How is disfellowshipping really that different from tough love, where you hold people accountable for their actions? Well, you can hold people accountable for their actions, of course you can. There's many ways to do it, plus keeping them safe. I don't think pushing someone into death is really holding people accountable for their actions. It's a complicated question, said Schmaltz, who is opposed to using... So this is where he becomes Professor Arsehole, who is opposed to using the word cult to describe the Jehovah's Witness Church. Well, then, Professor Arsehole, you need to look at the definitions of cult, the many definitions, the how you recognize characteristics is the word I was looking for of a cult, and then you'll see how they're different to various other religions you'll be looking at. So don't speak if you're going to be an asshole. I mean, yeah, present both sides, that's great, but really look at the facts. He's saying we should look at the Jehovah's Witnesses not as a bizarre religious group, but as a religion that has its own internal means of discipline. But he doesn't have an appropriate internal means of discipline. So, like, you get 58%, 57% of the Australian known pederasts confessed that they were to elders, and not one of them was reported to the police. You think that's a sufficient internal means of discipline? Do you think that? They can be very harsh and have very unintended and tragic consequences. Well, the whole history now, decades, to be able to look and see, oh, what happens? Oh, we kill people. Perhaps we should do something about it. So it's a refusal. It's a refusal to look at what happens. The governing body, no. They don't give a shit. So this was Treza Baldas. It's a bit of an unfortunate name. Maybe it's pronounced differently. Sorry, Treza. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive article. Thank you so much. It's much appreciated. Sorry to everyone who hear me go on and name call. You know, sometimes I just can't be asked with polite words. So well done to the people that spoke out. Thank you. It's great. Sorry for all those enduring bereavement by this. Okay, everyone, I'll leave a link to this article in the description and pinned to the top of the comments. Sorry, I'm really tired this afternoon. So you got a zombie reading out to you. Okay, bye for now.